Capitalism is horrific. I wonder if someone has ever made a game about it.
I'm Caleb. I wrote a book. It's an RPG book about economic horror, and there's also zombies in it. It's called Red Markets.
Red Markets is a game of economic horror where the world has ended, but the rent is still due.
It's available for pre-order on BackerKit if you've not heard of it before.
Basically, the premise is that there's a zombie apocalypse, but it's unevenly distributed. Rather than a total apocalypse, there are huge swaths of surviving nation states, but you're not lucky enough to be in there. You live in the zones that have been abandoned, but the people who live there want to go back one day. In order for you to survive, a dark economy or a red market evolves between the recession and the loss, the area without zombies that were seated behind borders, and the loss, which is written off as. And in order to get out, in order to smuggle yourself out, you and your fellow player characters play takers who run jobs for these people, and amongst the other enclaves of survivors, the goal is to economically, invest and earn your way out of this, hellish nightmare scenario. Your power comes from your stuff. Like, your stuff makes you powerful. It is what is going to help you survive. Like, being good, being skillful helps. It's not like it doesn't contribute. That's necessary too. But being the best shot in the world with a gun that doesn't have bullets doesn't matter. You're not going to make it. It's a game where materialism is the focus, but it's not full of encumbrance rules. You're not counting every individual bullet in the gun. It is a game in which the stuff you have matters, and you need to do some serious resource planning. But that's serious resource planning that can be done at the table with your friends. You don't have to have a 4-hour homework session with a splat book dealing with 20 different stats of all that kind of stuff. So, and it is an economics game. So you can do everything from negotiating to running currency exchange scams to manipulating supply demand curves to running Sybil scams. There's rules for all that stuff. But those are additional things. The basic system is, in Profit, you roll a black D10 and a red D10 for everything you do. The black is the profit, the red is the cost. You need to be in the black on a roll. You're only ever adding to the black. You add your skill to the black, and skills usually range between 1 and 3. But what you can do is, if you have gear that helps you do something, you can spend charges on it, and every piece of gear has 10 charges to gain an additional thing. So if you're shooting, you could shoot more bullets to ensure you hit something, but those are bullets you're not getting back. So you've got this really hard dice mechanic that's less than 45% at base, and you need skills to do it, and your skills are relatively low. But you have these great items that have this very simple charge system where you just tick off boxes, and you tick it off once so you could make a roll. And then you tick off more boxes if you want to ensure you succeed. But as you play, you're bleeding out. You're hemorrhaging your stuff, and you can only afford so much stuff. And that's the basic mechanic. You can read one chapter of the book and get playing, because that mechanic does everything. If you roll the red and black, that resolves everything. When you want to create an economy, that gives you a supply-demand curve with the same dice. When you want to have an encounter in the loss and you haven't planned something, you can roll red and back and consult a table, and it does it for you. And it's all player facing. If you want to dodge, you're not playing against the NPC. You roll to dodge. If you failed to dodge, by definition, you got hit. If you succeed, by definition, you got out. And it's okay, because with that randomized red D10, it's wild. The fate, the difficulty of tasks varies really wildly and really unpredictably. And like the rest of us who live in the world, you've got to gamble your resources against the fact that you never know how difficult it's going to be. You never know if it's going to be you spent and it ended up being very easy, or if it ended up being really hard and that was the only thing that saved you. And you kind of have to, that anxiety of how much do I invest into this is the basic system. And that's every single roll. In negotiation, it's always that red-black, and then always that black D10. So it's a balancing act of do I buy enough to stay alive and hurt my overhead, or do I try and go without and try and get out faster? There's also what would be called a sanity mechanic in the game called humanity, because it's awful out there over the fence, and doing the job is a terrible job, and no one would ever want to do it, and it's extremely damaging to your psyche. So yeah, there are people who are lost for life, and they just don't understand the retirement mechanic of the game, and they kit themselves out and everything. and it's just this horrible siege-like wear down as they slowly go insane or catch a bad break on a roll, or adventure is cool, but it is also, if you take the facts of the human condition, well, pretty terrifying and traumatic. And the economic things that cause that, because they do happen in the real world, I think a story gets better if you bring that into your, fictional fantasy. It's just zombies, it's just space aliens, it's just White Walkers element. I think it becomes a better story for it. The basic idea of a campaign is around an enclave. You basically, as a group, build together a setting. You can also have these entire player-generated jobs. Like the GM doesn't have to come up with every job. They can go, like the players can be like, I bet people need baby formula out here, and so they design a score to go steal baby formula. We have boom and bust rules. Boom rules make the game easier. Bust rules make the game harder. Red Markets is very much a game that wanted to talk about the horrors of capitalism and economic horror and life on the wrong side of an economy more than it wanted to talk about zombies. Zombies are the metaphor we used to carry us there. And I wanted zombies to be like the weather. It's a thing you plan around, and if you don't plan right, it could kill you. They're not the main antagonists. They're just there, and you have other concerns based around them and in spite of them. The zombie virus is itself undead. It has a living version, which is the most virulent thing ever. So then you have your 28 days later zombies. And that's why the recession is in no expense to go rescue these people in the loss, because if someone gets bitten, it reactivates into that living virus and they become like sprinting murder monsters that can take down all of society. But eventually, they die from hemorrhaging and lack of water and stuff like that. And at that point, the virus enters its undead state and starts puppeting the flesh around. So it's called the hot and the cold strains. And then there are aberrants. Sometimes the zombie virus doesn't work like it's supposed to, and no one knows why. And you certainly won't know why, because your characters are poor smugglers that are just trying to survive and save your families, not the heads of microbiology units, like your schmucks that go out and try and salvage bicycles from a disused factory. You're not looking into a microscope to try and figure out the most deadly virus that ever happened. So some of the zombies just don't make sense, and they're nightmare hell creatures that are beyond classification. And there's multiple types, and you can invent your own. So the way it's written in the book, it's like they're all rumors. They're so rare that like people who do the jobs like just share about them online, and like no one knows if it's creepypasta or if it's actually something that happened to somebody. So you can not use them at all. You could use as many as you want. You can make up your own, that kind of stuff. The other thing I wanted to go against is that in Red Markets you have dependence. So there's a scene that happens before campaign play. If you don't want to just go out there and kill stuff, you can do that. But if you want to have some more long-term stories, what you do is you assign other people at the table to play your dependents, which are people that cannot do what you do. Like they can barely scrape by maybe at the Enclave, like farming beets or something. But, grandma's not going to jump the razor wire and go fight hell monsters, and therefore she's not going to make enough to live without you. And so in Red Markets you have people that depend on you. So if you do not go out and get paid, it's not just like your character dies, like your daughter starves, or your son has to go take up your silenced pistol and start becoming a taker at 14. You're doing it to keep other people from this nightmare. And so it can really bleed you out if you use all the difficulty rules. But that's what those boom rules are for. If you just want to go kill monsters, just load yourself up on boom rules and make stuff explode. Those in there too. So you are one person against the weight of history and an economy, and you are not going to make it by yourself. You're going to hope to survive it. You're not going to overcome or change anything. You just need to get by and maybe hope your family doesn't get eaten up by the forces of history. So.
And there's 496 pages of it. So
also, the book is thick enough that if you taped it to your chest, it could stop, an improv, stabbing weapon.
I think you're pretty good for anything except for like an anti-material round. It's pretty thick.
It is not thick.
Hardcover, by the way.
Yeah.
If you pre-order now, though, you get into the fulfillment of the backers. So your books will be shipped out at the same time as the backers who back the Kickstarter. Buy a copy today, and the PDF's available for pre-order, so you can buy that right now. And then if you get a book, you can get the PDF right now, and then you will have the book shipped to you. You can search for
Red Markets RPG.
RedMarketsRPG.com. It's got a link and all sorts of fun stuff. And Red Markets is available for pre-order at BackerKit.